everyone, it's John from What Up, and welcome back to another video. And this will be my Season 2, Episode 4 Easter egg video. There are a ton of things in this episode that either reference small things from the books or entire story and plot lines that happen much later on that seem to be amalgamated into certain things on screen. I'm going to go through a bunch of them in today's video. So if you're new here, welcome. And if you're wondering what we do, we talk Wheel of Time. Anything and everything about the Wheel of Time. In fact, right now we're doing reviews, breakdown videos, and Easter egg videos for every single episode of Season 2. We also do a ton of stuff on news. So there is some news on Season 3. It's going to come out this week, and I have a couple of leaks for you folks. Most of them I'm keeping until the end of Season 2. However, tomorrow, Monday, I'm going to release a leak. I figure it's time. I've been talking about it for a while. I'll give you a casting tomorrow, so keep an eye on the channel for that. And if you're not already subscribed, please do so, because occasionally I do get these exclusive leaks, and I love sharing them with you folks. All right, all of that being said, before we jump into the video, I do have to give a bit of a spoiler warning since we're talking Easter eggs, plot lines, and things from the entire series. So, spoiler warning, if you have not seen the first season and the first 4 episodes of Season 2 of Sony and Amazon's Wheel of Time show, or read the entire Wheel of Time book series, we're talking The Eye of the World all the way up through and including A Memory of Light, the full 14 volumes, be forewarned, I may ruin plot points and character arcs from both of those mediums. All right, all of that being said, let's get on to those Easter eggs. All right, so the very first Easter egg we're going to talk about is something that mirrors something that happens in the books, but also completely departs from it, if that makes any sense. So we'll talk about the mirroring first. The beginning of the episode, Ashamiel is going down into a chasm, into a cave, so to speak, to release Lanfear. And as he's doing that, the pathway inside is very narrow, but then it widens and he can see up to the sky. So you can see the sky here. You can actually see the sunlight. And then he carries on, goes into the cave where Lanfear is imprisoned. In the book series, Sheol is a mountain in the Blight that essentially is where the pattern is at its thinnest towards the Dark One's prison. Now, the Dark One is imprisoned. He is technically no closer to the pattern than anywhere else in the world, and his prison is no closer to our reality than anywhere else in the world. But here, the pattern is at its thinnest. You can actually speak to the Dark One. He can influence events. He can do different things there, and he has some kind of control over the world around Sheol. So as Forsaken or other Dark Friends go down into the cave inside of Sheol to visit the Dark One, or to get close to him to talk to him, whether by invitation or they're forced to, there is a ceiling height difference. So the higher the ceiling height above them as they're walking down through this chasm into the cave where the Dark One can be talked to, the more favor they have, the happier the Dark One is with them, because he can affect the reality around there. And the more disfavor they have, or if they've made him mad, the chasm will kind of close in around them. There might be big spikes or whatnot above them, kind of pushing them into the ground. And both can happen at the exact same time. And it did a few times in the book series when 2 people went down into the Dark One's prison, and one had favor and one did not. Again, this isn't Sheol. This isn't where the pattern is the weakest. Things are changed, of course, for the television show, but I think this was a slight nod to that because we're seeing him going down to release a Forsaken. Now, here's where the other big change is. In the book series, the seals are not really seals in the Dark One's presence. They're focal points for the actual seals the One Power was used to make. And these focal points are made out of Heartstone. And it's talked about in the show a little bit here and there because the seals are still made from Heartstone. They're basically indestructible. The One Power just makes them stronger. But Moraine gets a piece of it at one point or another, and it's from the sundial in Kyrian. And I'm thinking that this is it right here. You can see pieces of it kind of broken off here. And this seal is a little similar to the seal that we've seen in the first season in episode 8. The one that kind of cracked when Ashamiel kind of laughed and got happy when he was released. So I think what we're going to see in the show is we're going to see giant, massive seals at different points around the world, and the Forsaken or the Dark Friends will have to travel to these seals to actually break the other Forsaken out. That's just a theory I'm having, but again, it does make kind of a little bit of sense because that's what Ashamiel is sort of doing here with Lanfear, and then it makes sense in the fact that if the Forsaken are freed near major cities where plot points happen, it just makes it easier to film in those locations and keep everything kind of enclosed in one spot. Again, just a theory I have, but it seems like these seals are much bigger. But really a neat Easter egg, so to speak, when referencing Sheol when he's going down to break out to Lanfear. All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about is Maureens Family, which leads into another Easter egg later on in the episode, in Aging of the Aes Sedai. So Maureens Family is referenced a couple of different times in the book series, and you tend to know what her lineage is and where she comes from, and the family's mostly disgraced. We'll talk about that again in a bit. But it also leans into the aging of Aes Sedai and their family members and other people they leave behind. This is a theme in the books. It's not a huge theme, however. It's mentioned a couple of different times that people leave behind their families, either children, husbands or wives, their brothers, sisters, friends, and they never really get to see them again, or they sort of age out, so to speak. Everyone around them dies and they carry on, because the one power does slow your aging a fair bit. Now, in the book series, if you don't swear the 3 oaths, you live for an incredibly long time. If you swear the 3 oaths, however, it sort of cuts your life in half or even into a third, so you're not living near as long as you would be if you didn't swear the 3 oaths. I don't know if they're going to do that in the show. However, they're referencing Maureens Family a fair bit already. We've seen them on screen, which is not something we really get to see very often in the book series. And the interesting fact here is that Maureen is not the older sister. She's actually the younger sister. This was likely due to the fact that it's easier to showcase an older younger sister to hammer this point home that I saw I aged differently than to say that this is my older sister and she just looks a little bit older than we expected. That's likely what that is. But either way, her uncle is mentioned, and how he disgraced the family and ruined them. Again, that's a point towards her lineage in the book series. We're going to get into that in a few minutes, because one of the paintings in her rooms when she was with her younger sister actually seemed to showcase part of their family history. All right, so the next Easter egg has to do with an entire storyline that is mirroring something that happens in the books that is likely, I think, we're not going to see on screen for a bunch of different reasons, but the main one is that we're seeing the storyline play out right now. So during The Dragon Reborn, a little bit in The Great Hunt, and some in The Shadow Rising, Lan and Maureen are kind of acting sort of the same way they are on screen right now. They are at odds. They don't like each other that much. Maureen is being upset with Lan, and Lan is upset with Maureen. The bond is chafing, I think, is the way it was put in the book series. Essentially, Lan is not quite the same as he was with Maureen the last 20 years, because he started to fall in love with Nynaeve, amongst a bunch of other things that are going on. He feels responsibility for the Emond's Fielders and actually forms friendships with them, which is new to him. Now, all of that being said, before I get into the next bit, I'm giving one final spoiler warning. If you're here because you don't care about spoilers and you haven't read the book series, that's totally fine. But I'm going to ruin some major things from the book series that I don't think are likely we're going to see on screen, so it probably won't ruin too much for the show. But, again, you've been warned. All right, so this entire plot line is of loss. So Maureen masked the bond before she lost her ability to channel. And by lost her ability to channel, I still think she's a shield put on her by Shamael that she needs Rand to unravel. It's my guess anyway. But either way, she's lost the ability to channel, and the bond was masked while that happened. So it's like Lan lost his Aes Sedai, but not really. Even Alana mentions it. If bond wasn't ripped from him, it's just he doesn't have it anymore. And I think the way masking the bond works in the show is a bit different than in the books, but the similarities are enough that I believe that he's probably not going through the same things that we saw with Stefan in season 1, but maybe something slightly like that. But what they're doing with him here, where he's with Alana, they kind of joke about her taking him to bed. He is making friends with her warders, and they're doing everything they can to spend as much time with him as possible, and they're keeping him busy. This isn't a whole lot of water for bread. Mirrors another storyline in the books after Maureen dies. So Maureen, quote-unquote, dies. She dies, but she doesn't really die in the book series. And Lan's bond is passed on to a green sister, Maureens Sedai. Now, Maureens specializes in keeping warders who lost their Aes Sedai alive. And a bunch of things happen at that point. Maureens takes him to bed. Maureens keeps him busy. Maureens tries to have her warders make friends with him. All of these things are the things that happen in the book series when he's dealing with the loss of Maureen, until eventually he finds something in life that he values more than his own death, and that is Nynaeve, and they end up being together. So I think what they're doing is they're getting all of this out of the way right now, and they're not going to kill Maureen off. But this is a huge kind of nod to that full storyline that happens much later on in the book series, after the towers split, when one of the Saladar Six sort of takes Lan under her wing to keep him alive. Either way, I don't think we're going to see Maureen die in the show, and they're getting this out of the way, I believe, early in the second season on purpose, because I don't think we're going to actually see Maureen leave the show. And the next thing I want to talk about is this. This is Maureen and Logain, and Maureen is offering him the one thing that he can't, that he truly wants because he's lost one power, and that is death. All right, so during the conversation between Maureen and Logain in this scene, she mentions being studied by the Yellow and the Brown Aja. That actually did happen in the book series. So he wasn't in a sanatorium in Cairhien in the book series. He was actually in the White Tower. He was allowed to wander the tower grounds. He wasn't kept in a cell or anything because he was sort of a pathetic shell of a man who'd lost all purpose because he can't channel the one power anymore. And once someone's gentle, that's usually it for them. And he was being studied by both the Yellow and the Brown sisters, both for mental health reasons, physical health, all kinds of different things. And that is par for the course and normal for a man who's been gentle. That's just sort of what happens. It's rare enough that they don't see them very often, and they do study them. So that was sort of a reference and a nod to the things that were actually happening to Logain in the book series before he found purpose again and kind of went off with former Amyrlin Swan and the Keeper of the Chronicles, or former Keeper of the Chronicles, Lyanna Sedai. That leads us into the next little Easter egg, and that is this conversation with Liandrin and Lyanna. Now, Liandrin basically states that if the Amyrlin falls, so will the Keeper during this whole scene, and that is a direct reference to the Tower Coup. Now, early on in The Dragon Reborn, there is a coup basically led by Elaida Sedai to depose the Amyrlin. Swan is stilled, Lyanna is stilled, they're placed in a tower cell, and they're basically going to be put to death. At that point, they're rescued and they escape. When they escape, they move on and basically join a rebel group of Aes Sedai. This conversation is direct foreshadowing to that happening. Now, we do know that the Tower Coup scenes were filmed for early Season 3, so we're likely seeing it on screen. And this is just one of those neat little bits of foreshadowing. Yes, it references something that happens in the book series, but it's also foreshadowing that something that is definitely happening in the next season of the show. And we do know that Sophie, the actress who's playing Swan, wasn't available for filming right now, and that's sort of what they're talking about here, because she's a very hectic schedule, so she couldn't be in the second season as much as you'd like. So she isn't here, but we do get to see her much later on, where we believe is Cairhien. All right, next up is Perrin and Elias. They're having a conversation basically about being wolf brothers, and this is where we got to see that really cool scene of him learning the wolf speech and basically finding out Hopper's name. Hopper's definitely a good boy, 10 out of 10 would pet. Yeah, and he's now a fan favorite. 100%, probably the best character in the Wheel of Time, first and second season, bar none, is Hopper right now. That'll change, of course, when Gowan joins the show, but until then, it's just Hopper. So during the scene, one of the things that Elias mentioned is you'll lose your taste for cooked flesh soon enough. And that directly references a lot of things that happened to Perrin in the book series. So he, during the Great Hunt, really loved the idea of eating meat. And the less cooked meat, the better. And it frightened him so much that he ended up eating a lot of tubers and turnips and vegetables, vegetable stew, anything that didn't have meat in it, to sort of deny his nature. And the disgusted look on Perrin's face when they kind of have this conversation, I think is foreshadowing just seeing a bit of that in the show. Maybe they won't show it, but it definitely is referencing this stuff that happened in the books when all Perrin wanted was raw meat, and he didn't allow himself to. He ate turnips instead. So there's that. Now, this next bit when Selene and Rand go to visit this cabin in the woods in Kinslayer's Dagger. I thought that was a nice little nod. So Kinslayer's Dagger is a direct reference to Lews Therin, the dragon, because he was nicknamed Kinslayer because he killed his entire family after he went mad. And Selene was absolutely obsessed with him during the Age of Legends before she turned to the dark. And one of the things that happened with them is they did have a brief relationship, but Lews Therin wasn't as involved as Lanfear thought he would be, and he ended up finding another woman to love, and he ended up settling down and having a family with her. Lanfear never got over that, and she was absolutely jealous, and she was absolutely angry, and she was sort of obsessed, and that is kind of carrying over to this age. So in the book series, she did the same thing to Rand as she did to Lews Therin, because he was the reincarnation of Lews Therin, so that obsession just sort of carried on. Where they're going to Kinslayer's Dagger, where she used to go with her family a lot as a young girl, I thought this was a very nice little nod to the fact that she used to be with the man who was called Kinslayer. Either way, kind of a neat little Easter egg there. And we get on to this. So this is Mat and Min, and they're in an inn just outside of Cairhien, and they're dicing, and Mat's losing. He loses every single hand. but he's getting free drinks out of it, and he gets free rooms out of it. So one of the things I thought about in this is, well, Matt doesn't lose, does he? He always has great luck. Now, his luck didn't really take place until after he was fully separated from the dagger and healed. After that, his luck surged a number of different times, and it just kind of enhanced everything that happened after he was kind of separated from the dagger. He hasn't been fully separated from the dagger yet. We've seen scenes in season 2 where we know he's going to be with the dagger. So I'm thinking the full healing might either come later this season or early next season. We know that Matt is going to have some scenes filmed in the tower next season for sure, so he's likely going to be healed beginning of season 3. So we're not going to see the full aspect of Matt's luck until then. However, this got me thinking, this is likely part of his luck here. He's losing every single hand, and Min is winning. Min can't see the future. She can't see if she's going to win or not for this particular activity, like Matt states in the scene. However, Matt's getting a lot of free drink out of it. He's also getting the fact that she's going to finish his meeting and take him to Cairhien. Matt needs to be in Cairhien at this point in the show, so this could be his luck causing him to lose all night, so Min can carry on and do whatever she needs to do to get him taken to Cairhien, so he can get to where he has to be. Remember, his luck only works for what's best for him in the long run as well as the short. So yes, he may be losing every single hand right now, but it's advantageous to him to get him to where he needs to be later on. All right, so we have 2 more Easter eggs for you that I found in this particular episode. And the first one is this. We have this painting, what looks to be the Tree of Life. Now, we're not 100% sure that's what this is, but this has direct implications on the downfall of Maureens' family. So her uncle, one that's referenced here that ruined their family, was actually king, and he's the one that caused the Aiel War. Basically, in his pride, he cut down the Tree of Life, which was gifted to them by the Aiel as a people a very long time ago in order to make a throne, just to prove that he could and that he's sort of a big man. That didn't work out well for him. The Aiel poured over the Dragon Wall, and it caused the Aiel War. They ended up burning and pillaging until they actually got to Cairhien. They got King Lan, and they cut off his head. Once that happened, the war was over. The war wasn't there. They weren't there to conquer. They were just there to right the wrong or the slight to their honor when he cut down a gift from them. So showing this in the background in the scene where they're talking about how Uncle ruined the family, it's a direct reference to all of that thing, all of the things that happened that led to Rand being born on the slopes of Dragonmount. So there's a whole lot of little things that had to happen to lead up to that point, and this is just a little nod to that. Now, the last thing we're going to talk about is something that some fans are a little confused about, and I'm going to do my best to explain what happens here. Maureen kills Lanfear, or it sort of looks like she kills Lanfear at the very end of the episode. She stabs her through the heart and then slices her throat, because she thinks that Lanfear is going to jump right back up and attack them, which sort of kind of did happen. Now, in the book series, when a Forsaken dies, essentially what happens is the Dark One can take their soul, their essence, and cram it back into another body and reincarnate them and send them off to do his bidding again. It happened a number of different times in the book series. Basically, quite a few Forsaken that died were crammed into another body and sent out to do the bidding of the Dark One. However, that does cause some problems if they're going to do that in the show. Mainly, the first one being they have to cast more than one person to play Forsaken, and it means more than one person has to have the same mannerisms, play the character exactly the same way. It opens a whole can of worms. So what I think likely happened here is they're just cutting out the middleman, and instead of cramming them back into another body, the Dark One just kind of crams them back into their own body, heals them up, and sends them on their way. Now, there is a little bit of evidence as to why that happens, and that is this. If you take a look at her eyes, I'm going to have to move myself here, just out of the way a little bit. You see all of these black streaks or dots in it, and they appear when someone uses the true power or the essence of the Dark One in the book series. So I think what's happening here is the true power is being used on her or through her as a conduit by the Dark One. He heals her wounds with it and then crams her essence back in there, and then she gets back up. We know she comes back in the next episode for sure, because we've seen already a teaser with her walking out the door. And I think this is how they're getting around the body swap problem from the books for the show. Now, this means that Balefire will probably be all the more important for the show. For those of you who don't know, Balefire is a weave that is basically banned in the White Tower. Rand learns it, and it's really the only way to truly kill the Forsaken, because a body destroyed by Balefire, well, they can't be rescued or taken from the land of the dead by the Dark One. And that's because Balefire not only kills the individual that hits it or the things that it touches, it also burns it from the pattern before it actually dies. For example, let's say you go out and you do your grocery shopping today. You go to the grocery store, you pick up some apples, you pick up some bread, you come home. Someone's standing in your driveway, they balefire you. You died at, say, 4 p.m. after your grocery shopping is done. But because they hit you with a moderate stream of balefire, it actually burned the thread of your pattern backwards in time till that morning. So everyone remembers that you went grocery shopping. Everybody remembers that you bought apples and bread. You took them home, but it never actually happened. The apples you bought are still at the store. The bread you bought is still at the store. All the people you interacted with, that you touched their lives during that day, all of these small ripples, they never happened. People remember it happening, but it doesn't. And it causes great strain in the pattern. Even a small amount of balefire, going back a little bit of time, causes a big problem. And in the Age of Legends, during the War of Power, entire cities were destroyed by balefire, and the whole pattern almost unraveled, which is why they sort of kind of made a truce that they would never use it again, and it became forbidden. So I think in the show, because of this sort of instant resurrection, it's going to be a very, very important thing for Rand to learn. All right, so that's all the Easter eggs that I found in this particular episode, but I'm sure there are plenty more. So if you folks find them, please let me know in the comments down below what they are. In a couple weeks' time, once Season 2 is done, I will gather all of them up, put them in a pinned comment, and then I'll make a big Easter egg video for the entire season of all the things that I missed that you folks found. And of course, if you're not already subscribed, please do so, because tomorrow, Monday, I'm releasing a Season 3 leak. I have a bunch of them for Season 3 right now, but this is one that I think goes hand in hand with some of the things that they're discussing and talking about in the show right now, and it's going to be one that the fandom's going to be talking about. So if you folks like leaks, as well as official news, breakdowns, and Easter eggs, make sure you subscribe to the channel, because you're not going to want to miss them when I do drop them. All right, thank you so much for sticking with us here to the very end. Here's to many more.